As many. The chair recognizes the honourable member for Fox Hill.
Mr. Speaker, I really wanted to begin where the member for West Grand Bahama left off, which is those who were predicting or marking the death of democracy have something else to say, I hope, this evening. And at some point, I also want to address those members of the Progressive Liberal Party who may be looking on this afternoon with their eye to the 2017 election, and to suggest to them that this is no time to go wobbly, that the infrastructure of the political organization is strong, that it is in place, that its programs are proceeding apace, that it has not been deflected, that the work of the government goes on, that there is interface with all of the various sectors, and that we are in a very sensitive but uplifting period. I said to the Prime Minister a couple of weeks ago when the first of these dissents took place in the public forum that I would have paid $50 for these seats. I would have paid $50 for these seats. I've had the good fortune now to be elected for 3 times. I've seen some of the greatest dramas unfold in a place that I always wanted to be in, and I didn't have to pay to get here. I just showed up in the morning, sat down, and watched the drama unfold. Sometimes to my amusement, sometimes to my consternation, but always it kept me awake and keeps me awake. Never. Never. Now, before getting into the substantive part of my contribution, though, I do want to extend my condolences to the family of Stephanie Martin Morley. She was the daughter of my friend, the late Elon Sonny Martin, and I do want to express my condolences to Stretch, her husband, to Sheila, April, and Ricardo. This is a family I knew and know very well. Stephanie is a former Miss Grand Bahama, and I got to meet her in the days when I lived in Grand Bahama in the 1980s. And it always stuns me when someone this young and vibrant passes away. It seems to me that the person is gone too soon. And so I would wish to mark her passing by extending my condolences on this occasion to her family, and say that it is my hope and prayer that she rests in peace. Mr. Speaker, for most of my political life, people would describe me as an iconoclast. And there was a time when I would be, Telford George, as I remember, was the Chief Justice. And I was walking into the Supreme Court one day, looking after some function or other, and he greeted me by saying, "And how's the enfant terrible this afternoon?" A fancy expression which means, yes, literally means terrible child. You know, the fellow who attacks the icons, who sees the things that are there and says, why not? Who's always the one to bring this to the attention of the country. And for a very long time, I provided entertainment, I used to call it, to the people of the Bahamas for many decades.
Bread. Get into that big tree tomorrow.
Yes. You know. Yeah, you remember that one too. No, I used to. I of course was building a political career.
don't mean it's necessary.
one of my friends, in those days, but, one of my friends who's a minister of the government, because I had separated ways with the PLP at a certain point, and there was a demonstration going downstairs in front of the Ministry of Health. So he sent a message to me and said, I was a lawyer at the time, says, tell your friend, why doesn't he get off the street and go practice law and make some money and stop standing outside doing foolishness? So I said to him, I sent him a message back. I said, you tell your friend, right? You tell them, I say that at the end of the day, both of us are going to be 6 feet under, and we can carry nothing that we make while we're alive. So we may as well do what we want to do. And
I was in the Minister of Health.
no. and I won't tell the story about how the meeting got broke up in Centerville at night when I was running for chairman. But that's for another place and time. I've had a very exciting life. That's the best. So, all I'm saying to PLP is look, don't let the firmament be disturbed. Don't let the firmament be disturbed. We're not used to, I think, a situation which happens very often in the UK, which has a huge parliament, 600-odd members. And they have something which is called the 3-line whip or the 4-line whip and so on and so forth. And when these things are put on, all the persons who are part of the party are supposed to, when the vote takes place, they're all supposed to vote in favor of the proposition. But every once in a while, you'll have a number of dissenters from the side of the government who join issue with the opposition. The opposition finds it a joyous occasion, obviously, because they want the votes. But at the end of the day, usually the member is only interested in that particular issue. At the end of the day, the person remains a member of the Progressive Liberal Party or the party in the majority. So this happens from time to time. The problem, of course, is not in recent experience have we seen this. But I gave an example way back in 1977, where, as a result of a number of instances and dissents, the Progressive Liberal Party had to take a certain course of action. 8 people lost their nominations. The party still survived. Things go on. I wish to state, Mr. Speaker, that the majority of the Progressive Liberal Party in the House of Assembly supports these bills. The majority supports these bills. These bills will be passed. This is the policy of the Bahamas government. It didn't come willy-nilly. We didn't jump up and say, let's do this. You've heard from many speakers that this has been a long progression. I think the earliest date I heard back was 2008, but I'm sure the discussions have begun way before that. So this has been a long time. And the matter is, as Michael Manley used to say, impatient of debate. We are only here, Mr. Speaker, because the enemies of progress have one philosophy, and that philosophy is stall, delay, and defer. Last week we were told you need another week because you needed to read the bills. Stall, delay, defer. I asked the leaders of the party to allow me on this occasion to speak at the back end of this debate because I wanted to see what direction this was going to take. Because this, for me, is not about the technical matters which people have discussed in the provisions of the Act and so on and so forth. This is 2 things for me. First, a political matter. And second, it's a rights issue. So the first thing for me is it's a political matter. Secondly, it's a rights issue. It is political, Mr. Speaker, because we all need to get this stuff behind us and concentrate, in my view, on the campaign for 2017. That's where my eyes are, at all times. The Progressive Liberal Party needs, in my view, another 5 years at the helm of this country post-2017 to shape this country, the values and the ethos of this country. That is And that ethos, as far as I'm concerned, is to reset firmly the base on which Bahamian nationalism was begun. There's no question in my mind that the governments of the Free National Movement for 15 years represented a concerted effort by fair means or foul to de-Bahamianize the ethos of this country, and that there is severe corrective action needed to reset the base. And we, sir, now have the opportunity and are on our way to doing that. I believe that we can more profitably spend the rest of our term trying to get to the issue that is, in my view, bedevils the government. And that is the inability for us to get the bureaucracy in this country to do what we wanted to do in a timely, courteous, and accurate fashion. If, Mr. Speaker, we can fix that at the end of this term, we will have left a great legacy for the Commonwealth of the Bahamas. We need to get to that work. In order to do that, we need to put this stuff behind us. The matters which are before us in these last weeks are the following: the tax bills, the amendments to the Constitution, and the bills on gaming. All, sir, are impatient of debate. They are simple. There is nothing complicated about them. We have spent too much time trying to get this done, and it is simply time to put this behind us. What I continue to marvel at, and I have so much experience with it now that I should no longer marvel at it, is the propensity for the opponents of these measures, the usual suspects of anti-PLPs, who are able to deflect and to derail the public opinion by injecting into these campaigns silliness. We have only to look, sir, at the recent debates as an example. Sex, which we've always known just meant sex, male or female. Left to the naysayers, they now say it means something else. It means same-sex marriage all of a sudden. And women, they would have women lose the right to equality. An historic wrong going uncorrected because of that foolishness. With regard to these bills, Mr. Speaker, with regard to these bills, Mr. Speaker, some emotive words have been used. We heard some just this evening. Some people have used the word apartheid. Apartheid. Interesting. Now, apartheid, sir, is a system of organized racism by the Afrikaners of South Africa of separateness or apartness that was used to keep the races separated in South Africa and to oppress black people. That's what apartheid means. It's quite an emotive word. So, when someone compares this gaming bill and what it seeks to do, knowing that the architects of the anti-apartheid fight in the Bahamas are amongst the designers of this legislation on gaming, that's a very serious accusation indeed to make. The member for Angliston was a member of the anti-apartheid committee. Indeed, I was also a member of that committee. And to say that we are, in effect, complicit in apartheid, imposing apartheid in the Bahamas, that's a very serious allegation. I would invite the critics, therefore, to re-examine that comparison and resile from that position. The accusation is that the comparison is apt because the bill continues the discrimination, so the critics say, between Bahamians and non-Bahamians and their inability or ability to gamble in the casinos. Here are the facts on this matter as to who can and cannot gamble in casinos. The prohibition, first of all, is not against Bahamians, but against those who are ordinarily resident in the Bahamas. So, for example, my sister, who is Bahamian, but lives in the United States, comes to Nassau, can and has gambled in the casinos in the Bahamas without offending any law. So as a fact, Bahamians are not excluded from the casinos, even though in most cases being Bahamian and ordinarily resident may fall together. So that's the first point. Secondly, this bill, has in fact conceded the point of the young people of the country that the provision in the law which would tend not to allow them to gamble in casinos is now outdated and indefensible. That's what the policy of this bill is. It concedes that fact. The Minister for Gaming will tell you that I am among the libertarians in the cabinet. I do not understand, nor do I accept, these nefarious arguments that people have been getting into, matters which are people's bedroom business, their faith, their morals, and their habits, and seeking to impose their views on others. That, in my respectful view, is none of my business. Yet, people are all over the place getting up on their moral high horse about gambling. I agree with Bill Bennett, the former Education Secretary of the United States, who said there is no moral element to gambling. There is none, of course, unless it offends your personal morals. And if it offends your personal morals, then that's your business, not mine. And provided the issues of gambling do not offend the public interest, then again, the individual is free to do as he or she wishes. It is simply not my business. The evolving of the public policy on this matter is a textbook case for the students of public administration at the College of the Bahamas. First, it is another warning that I gave when I spoke on the bills to amend the Constitution, that when you pass a law, you have to be careful that it does not burden or tie the hands of your successors so that it makes it impossible for them to administer or govern without difficulty. Such are the citizenship laws of the Bahamas in our Constitution, a veritable nightmare of arcane provisions. When Pop Simonet and his men put this law in place as a stop at the church way back into the 1960s or thereabouts, it may have been fine then. I was a boy then. I resented it then. So judge now. However, after 41 years of independence, such a proviso is not acceptable to the kids we've been telling for 41 years that this is their country and they are free to develop it and do with it as they wish within its borders. However, it is not always easy when you're in power to dismantle what has been established. These policies are compromises. I am from the school that says just do away with it, but I also know that you have to know the consequences of what you are doing. Yes, some people may be happy, but what if what we do results in the loss of tens of thousands of jobs because we act too precipitously? What if what we do ends up killing the thing that we love, to paraphrase the words of Oscar Wilde, the very gambling sector we're seeking to save? What if our decision does that? What if what we do ends up throwing the baby out with the bathwater? So the bill now provides for one simple thing. The minister can, with the stroke of a pen, remove the distinction between those who can now gamble and who cannot gamble. It gives the power to do so without coming back to Parliament. The Parliament is now saying by this act, you have the authority to remove it when you feel that it is appropriate. So, no, I do not think that this bill perpetuates discrimination against Bahamians. I am advised that some are saying that the policy of restrictions on who can gamble in casinos is a sign that the big casino operators are yanking our chains. But this makes us, therefore, indistinguishable from the F&M. With the greatest of respect, that is simply not true. The casino operators care not one whit about whether locals gamble or they don't. They made no such insistence. Secondly, this legislation was developed not as two regimes, but as one regime, with taxation and oversight being an equal opportunity. What you see here is the result of work both with the domestic gaming sector and the traditional casinos. No one got any particular advantage, and no one was excluded. The opponents have practiced the art of political sucker punching to a science. But when you strike back at them with the words that aptly describe their behavior as intolerant, bigoted, and prejudiced, well, they then say that you're being unfair. Take the argument advanced by the leader of the opposition in the public domain that this will only assist a select few. The DNA is in the press today saying that it is a political payback. Anything, of course, to make headlines. Yesterday, we were treated to a tour de force of inaccuracies and half-truths which demonstrate more than adequately the maxim, "Don't bore me with the facts. I have my story, and I'm sticking to it." The regime of the bills is open, pellucid, and transparent. The criteria for applying are laid out specifically. The fees are laid out. Who can qualify is laid out. Yet, there will be market limitations. But right now, there are limitations on the number of taxi plates that we can issue. It's been so for years. Right now, there are limitations on who can open a port in New Providence. And the last administration picked select families and gave them that benefit and put a poison pill in it to prevent the PLP or any of their successors from doing anything about it. The last administration did the same thing with BTC. They also plucked an obscure company out of Canada in contradistinction to Bahamians who had applied and gave them a monopoly to run a cable television company for 15 years. They didn't see anything wrong with that either. The argument isn't that because they were doing it that we are doing it. The argument is this: what the heck are you doing coming preaching about a select few being fixed up when that is the modus operandi of the FNM?
Friends, family, and lovers.
When the PLP is saying that it is time for a new group of PLP's people to share in the wealth, that's what we're saying. It's time for a new group, not the same chosen few. This policy promotes Bahamianization. It promotes spreading the wealth. It is an equitable solution to a vexing issue. Then I add this. Let us say the FNM succeeded with their no vote to stop the present policy that we have established on gaming. What would be the result if their vote were successful? The local result will be either the continuation of the present unregulated, untaxed sector that we have now, which we all know we cannot continue without consequences both domestic and foreign, or alternatively, it would mean that the police resources would have to be used to close the sector down. We all know that that's impossible. We all know that that would be a serious misallocation of the finite resources of this country to engage in such an exercise, like Don Quixote tilting at windmills. We also all know that thousands of people would be put out of work. So, the result of the FNM's no vote, if it were successful, would be to drive the money underground and increase the criminality in the country, increase joblessness and all the attendant problems that causes, and erode the already precarious financial state of the country by the misallocation of valued resources into law enforcement instead of productive wealth. Why then, Mr. Speaker, should we engage in such tomfoolery when, with the simple passage of this bill, we can have the best of both worlds? There will be a strong, regulated, healthy domestic gaming sector with money in the bank and people in work prospering and the government getting its share. And we will eliminate the potential for more criminality. What that sounds like is a win-win to me. That sounds like a win-win proposition.
Everybody wins.
Everybody wins. The way policy is developed, Mr. Speaker, is this. Cabinet generates the legislation. The legislation is discussed within the party caucus. After the party caucus meets, it comes to the House. We present the policy to the House as the best policy, the best compromise in a situation which is difficult to decide. I commend these policies to the people of the Bahamas. I say to our own supporters that 10, 15, 20 years from now, the headlines that you see, the headlines that the iconoclast may garner from the newspapers will all fade into history and hardly anyone will remember. What is important is that we who are in this place at this time, and we have the power in our hands to change our country. If the answer is to say yes, to bring about change, to create more freedom than less freedom, then the answer must be yes. It mustn't be no, and then we resile to the position that we've always stayed in, living in backwardness. Anytime the question is put to us to move forward, to expand rights, our answer must always be yes. In this case, the government, the policy of the bill is asking us to say yes to advancing more rights and freedoms for Bahamians. I'm saying I'm voting yes. I'm asking my constituents to support it. This side is going to vote yes, and I commend these bills as sound public policy. Thank you, sir.